Well, tonight, a medical mystery that took decades to solve. Just imagine being told that you had a chronic illness only to find out all these years later it was the wrong diagnosis.
A local man's symptoms all pointed to a very common chronic ailment. But as senior health correspondent Monica Robbins reports, it was anything but common, and it took 40 years to solve.
It started way back when I was probably, 29, 30.
Dan Young says it felt like a case of bronchitis, frequent coughing, and fluid in his lungs that got worse when he laid down.
I went to a pulmonologist way back then, and they just told me I had, allergy-induced asthma.
He left with an inhaler, but the symptoms remained. Then came the chronic pneumonia. What followed was an odyssey of doctor's appointments, more medications, and a new diagnosis, acid reflux, but still no relief.
It was getting so bad that, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and just get up and go walk the neighborhood, settle everything down, and then I'd go back and, go to bed.
4 decades of misery. Now Dan was having trouble keeping food down. An X-ray showed worrisome spots on his lungs until finally.
He looked at the X-rays and he said, "I don't believe this is cancer."
Dan had an appointment with Dr. Raju of University Hospitals, and he brought something new, a question no other doctor had asked before.
"Tell me your story, what's going on?"
Dan ran through his 40-year history, including how his lungs felt like they were being squeezed.
I think most medical mysteries are truly mysterious when the symptom is common, but the disease is not so common.
A battery of tests help rule out diseases. Dr. Raju had one more, a 24-hour impedance test, measuring the amount and type of gastroesophageal reflux in Dan's esophagus. Finally, an answer.
It's very difficult to tell somebody who's been told for 40 years that he's got asthma, to tell him now that he doesn't have asthma.
It gets even crazier. Remember years ago, doctors diagnosed Dan with acid reflux? Nope. Instead, Dr. Raju determined his patient had an underdiagnosed condition called non-acid reflux.
Acid wasn't his problem. What his problem was the mechanical issue where fluid was being allowed to come up in his esophagus. So you could give him all the medicine you want all day and it wouldn't be effective.
That meant surgery at the bottom of his esophagus and into his stomach to fix the problem. Once they went in, Dr. Lena Kaitan could see why Dan said his lungs felt the way he described.
We could see a pretty impressive hiatal hernia and more of his stomach up in his chest than was appreciated.
Dan's stomach was pressing on his lungs through a hole in his diaphragm. Laparoscopy closed the hiatal hernia. Then, using stomach tissue, Dr. Kaitan built a sphincter to close the base of his esophagus by 75%. It made a huge impact.
I'm not coughing constantly. My lungs aren't all full of fluid all the time. I breathe easier. I can eat whatever I want. Life is just a whole different ballgame.
The moral of this story, if your doctor tells you you have acid reflux or asthma and medications haven't worked in more than a year, it's time to see a specialist and ask for a more thorough evaluation. No one should have to wait more than 40 years for an accurate diagnosis. In the newsroom, Monica Robbins, 3 News.